Hey, welcome back. We're diving into something today that I think you'll find pretty interesting. It's how movies, TV shows, games, and even books manage to slip in these big ideas without ever being preachy about it.
Oh, I know what you mean. Like, it's that feeling you get when you finish a great movie and realize it's made you think about something in a whole new way. It's subtle, but it works.
Exactly. Get ready for dystopian futures, post-apocalyptic worlds, sentient robots, you name it. We're going to see how stories make us think, maybe without even realizing we're learning.
It's remarkable how a well-told story can entertain us on one level, but then on another level, simultaneously prompt us to consider these deeper issues. It's almost like a magic trick.
It really is. Let's start with a game you might not expect to find on a list like this. Red Dead Redemption 2. It's a Wild West game, sure, but there's this surprising layer to it that deals with conservation.
What's fascinating about Red Dead Redemption 2 is that it doesn't just lecture you about conservation, it weaves it into the gameplay experience. The game world is filled with this incredibly detailed ecosystem, and your actions directly impact it.
So, more than just cowboys and shootouts, what kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, for example, if you overhunt a specific type of animal, you'll see their numbers dwindle in that area. You might even have trouble finding them later on when you need their pelts or meat. The game also incorporates elements like pelt quality, where you're rewarded for clean kills and responsible hunting practices. It's subtly teaching you about the delicate balance of an ecosystem.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if players subconsciously absorb these messages and apply them to real-world issues, even if they don't realize it at the time.
It's definitely possible. The game isn't hitting you over the head with a save the planet message, but it is prompting you to think about your actions and their consequences within that virtual world. And those lessons about interconnectedness and responsible resource management, well, they can certainly resonate beyond the game itself.
Now, let's switch gears to a film that takes a different approach to conveying its message. Let's talk about Children of Men. It paints a bleak, dystopian future, but it makes you feel the desperation of these characters. How does it achieve that so effectively?
Children of Men excels at immersing you in its world. The film doesn't just tell you that humanity is on the brink of collapse because reproduction has stopped. It makes you feel it, viscerally. The cinematography is often handheld and gritty. It places you right in the middle of the chaos and uncertainty. And the sound design, it amplifies the feeling of claustrophobia and tension. The characters, even the supporting ones, feel incredibly real and relatable.
So it's more about showing than telling. You're not just being told about the desperation, you're experiencing it all alongside the characters. It's not exactly a feel-good movie, but it definitely sticks with you.
Right, and that feeling you're left with, that sense of unease and uncertainty, it prompts you to connect the dots. You start to think about real-world parallels. Refugee crises, dwindling resources, political instability. Not comfortable thoughts, but powerful.
That's what's so interesting about this concept of show, don't tell. When you're allowed to arrive at a conclusion yourself through the experience of the story, it has a much stronger impact.
Absolutely. It invites the viewer to become an active participant in the storytelling process, rather than a passive recipient of information.
Okay, so we've seen how a video game can subtly nudge us towards thinking about conservation, and how a film can evoke powerful emotions to make us consider bigger picture issues. Let's keep exploring this idea with a few more examples, starting with Blade Runner 2049. This film goes deep into the question of what it even means to be human.
Blade Runner 2049 uses the backdrop of advanced technology and artificial intelligence to explore the very nature of consciousness and identity. The film's central question is, if a being can experience emotions, form relationships, and demonstrate self-awareness, are they truly any different from us, even if they're synthetic?
But it avoids giving you easy answers. It
Right.
leaves you pondering the nature of consciousness and what it truly means to be alive.
Exactly, and that ambiguity is a large part of why it's so thought-provoking. It forces the viewer to grapple with their own beliefs and definitions.
Now, for a completely different kind of world, and a completely different set of questions,
Yeah.
The Handmaid's Tale. This show depicts a chillingly dystopian future where women are stripped of their rights and reduced to, basically, vessels for reproduction.
The Handmaid's Tale is a powerful example of how storytelling can make us experience oppression and injustice viscerally. The series meticulously builds this world where women are systematically stripped of their autonomy, their voices, even their names. You witness the insidious ways in which power operates and how control is exerted through fear and manipulation.
It's one thing to read about these kinds of oppressive regimes, but to see it unfold, to witness the characters' struggles and acts of resistance, it adds a whole other level of understanding and emotional impact. It's powerful, but it's also a tough watch.
Definitely. It's a story that stays with you. And it prompts you to think critically about the world around you. It makes you question, what societal structures or systems do we take for granted that could, if left unchecked, lead to such a dystopian future?
Let's go from a dystopian future to first contact with aliens in the film Arrival. This one is more subtle, but it really makes you think about the power of language, how it shapes our reality.
What I find fascinating about Arrival is that it doesn't just depict an alien encounter. It delves into the profound impact that language has on perception, communication, even our understanding of time. The protagonist, a linguist, undergoes this incredible transformation as she decodes the alien language, and through her journey we begin to question our own preconceived notions about how we communicate and how we experience the world.
It's not your typical alien invasion movie. It's more about the profound implications of understanding and bridging the gap between cultures, even alien ones. It's a reminder that communication is more than just words. It's about understanding different perspectives and ways of thinking.
Absolutely. And the film's subtle exploration of these themes, it invites the viewer to consider. How do our own languages and cultural backgrounds shape the way we see the world? How do we approach communication with those who are different from us? It's a film that lingers in the mind long after the credits roll.
Okay, one last example for this first part of our deep dive,
Hmm.
and it takes us back into the realm of gaming, The Last of Us. This post-apocalyptic story, it really packs an emotional punch,
Yeah.
and it forces you to confront some tough moral choices.
The brilliance of The Last of Us lies in its ability to create these incredibly relatable characters. They're navigating a world that's both brutal and beautiful. The relationship between Joel, a hardened survivor, and Ellie, a young girl who may hold the key to humanity's survival, it's the emotional core of the story. And as you journey with them, as you witness their struggles and their triumphs, you're forced to confront your own sense of morality.
The game doesn't shy away from depicting the harsh realities of survival in a post-apocalyptic world. And you're constantly facing these dilemmas where there's no easy answer. Kill or be killed, trust or betray. These choices have consequences that you feel on a gut level.
Exactly. And because you're so invested in these characters, the choices you make as the player carry a lot of weight. It's a powerful way to explore the gray areas of morality. And it forces you to ask yourself, what would I do in this situation? What lines would I be willing to cross to protect those I care about?
Like the game is holding up a mirror, reflecting back your own values and beliefs.
It's a testament to the power of interactive storytelling, and it demonstrates how video games can be a powerful medium for exploring complex and challenging themes.
It's amazing how these stories, whether they're in games, movies, or books, can make us think about bigger issues without ever feeling like we're being lectured to.
It's the power of subtle storytelling, and we've only just scratched the surface.
We'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll explore even more examples of how media sneaks in big ideas. See you then.
Welcome back to our exploration of how stories can subtly convey powerful messages. It's really quite fascinating.
It is. It's amazing how these creators can weave in big ideas without ever being heavy-handed about it. So where do we go from here? What other examples can you share?
Well, let's delve into animation for a bit. It's a medium that's often associated with, children's entertainment, but it can be incredibly powerful in tackling these kind of complex issues. Take Princess Mononoke, for example. This film uses its fantastical setting to explore the conflict between humanity and nature.
Princess Mononoke. Huh? I heard great things about it. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. How does it approach such a complex issue in a way that's engaging for both kids and adults?
Well, Princess Mononoke, it doesn't shy away from the sort of harsh realities of environmental destruction and the clash of cultures. It presents a very nuanced perspective, where neither side is entirely good or evil. The characters have very understandable motivations, and you find yourself empathizing with both the humans who are trying to survive and the forest spirits who are trying to protect their home.
So it sounds like it avoids that simplistic good versus evil trope, the one you often see in stories about environmentalism.
Exactly. And that complexity makes it all the more thought-provoking. It encourages viewers to consider these difficult choices that we face as a society when we try to balance progress with preservation. It's a film that raises questions about our responsibility to the planet and the consequences of our actions.
Speaking of complex moral choices, another example that comes to mind is the film To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a story about racial injustice and prejudice, but it doesn't preach. It simply tells a story about a lawyer who stands up for what's right, even in the face of, overwhelming social pressure.
To Kill a Mockingbird. That's a timeless classic for a reason. It's a powerful story about standing up for what you believe in, even when it's difficult. And it does so through the eyes of a child, which makes it all the more impactful, I think. You see the world through Scout's innocent perspective. And as she learns about prejudice and injustice, so does the viewer.
Yeah, it's one thing to be told about racism and prejudice, but to see it through the eyes of a child, to witness the consequences of hatred and bigotry, it hits you on a much deeper level.
Absolutely. And the film doesn't offer any easy answers or solutions. It simply presents a story about human nature, about the choices we make and the impact those choices have on others.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about some examples where the message maybe might have been a bit too heavy-handed, where the tale overshadowed the show. Yeah. One film that comes to mind is Elysium. It had a clear message about class disparity, but for some it felt like the message overshadowed the story.
Yeah, Elysium. It's a good example of a film with noble intentions, but perhaps stumbled in its execution. The film's vision of a future where the wealthy elite live in a luxurious space station while the rest of humanity struggles on a polluted and overpopulated Earth, it's a powerful one. However, some felt that the film's allegory was a bit too on the nose. Sacrificing character development and nuanced storytelling for the sake of hammering home its message.
It's a tricky balance, isn't it? You want to address important social issues, but you also don't want to sacrifice the storytelling aspect that makes those messages resonate. Another example that comes to mind is An Inconvenient Truth. It's a vital documentary about climate change, but its direct, data-driven approach, it lacks the immersive quality of storytelling that we've been discussing.
An Inconvenient Truth, it was groundbreaking in its ability to raise awareness about the urgency of climate change. However, its reliance on facts, figures, and scientific evidence, while undeniably important, sometimes came at the expense of emotional engagement. It's a film that appeals to the intellect, but perhaps not as much to the heart.
So it seems like finding that sweet spot where you're engaging both the head and the heart is key to making these big ideas truly stick with the viewer. Let's delve a bit deeper into why subtlety works so well in storytelling.
When a story allows you to draw your own conclusions, it becomes much more meaningful and memorable. It's like you've discovered something for yourself rather than having it dictated to you. And that sense of ownership, that feeling of, aha, I get it, makes the message all the more powerful.
It's like the difference between being handed a solution and figuring out the puzzle yourself. The satisfaction comes from the journey, from the process of understanding. A great example of this is The Shawshank Redemption. It's a film about hope and resilience, but it never explicitly spells out those themes.
Exactly. The Shawshank Redemption masterfully weaves those themes into the characters' experiences and journeys. We witness their struggles, their small victories, and their unwavering belief in something better, even in the face of despair. And it's through those experiences, those subtle moments of human connection and triumph, that the film's message of hope and resilience shines through.
It's a film that sneaks up on you emotionally. You're not being told what to feel. You're simply experiencing the story alongside the characters. And those emotions, they linger long after the film ends. Now, let's contrast that with a film like Crash, which tackles complex themes of race and prejudice, but sometimes feels a bit too on the nose in its approach.
Crash is a film that clearly wants to spark conversation about important social issues. And it does so by weaving together multiple storylines that intersect in kind of unexpected ways. However, some viewers felt that the film's characters often felt more like mouthpieces for specific viewpoints rather than fully fleshed out individuals. The dialogue sometimes felt a bit too preachy, like it was spelling out the film's message a bit too explicitly.
It's like the film is trying to teach us a lesson rather than allowing us to discover it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Through the characters and their experiences.
Exactly. And while the film's intentions are, admirable, that heavy-handed approach can sometimes create distance between the viewer and the story, making it less impactful.
So we've seen how subtlety can be a powerful tool for conveying big ideas. And we've also seen how a heavy-handed approach can sometimes backfire. Now let's dive into a genre that often excels at weaving in these complex themes in a way that's both engaging and thought-provoking. Science fiction.
Science fiction has this incredible ability to explore the potential consequences of our choices, both technological and societal, by creating these what-if scenarios. It's a genre that can hold up a mirror to our present while simultaneously imagining possible futures.
A classic example of this is the novel 1984. It's a chilling portrayal of a totalitarian state where every aspect of life is controlled and monitored. Big Brother is always watching.
1984. That's a timeless masterpiece. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, mass surveillance, and the suppression of individual thought. It's a story that resonates deeply in our current age of, technological advancements and political polarization.
It's a reminder that the future isn't predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make today.
Exactly. And science fiction isn't always about dystopian futures. It can also be a genre of hope and optimism, imagining new possibilities for human ingenuity and exploring the potential for us to, transcend our current limitations.
A great example of that is the film Arrival.
Yeah.
It's a science fiction film, but it's ultimately a story about hope, communication, and understanding. It challenges our perceptions of time and destiny and suggests that perhaps we have more agency in shaping our future than we realize.
Arrival. It's a beautiful example of how science fiction can be both intellectually stimulating and emotionally resonant. It's a film that stays with you long after the credits roll, prompting you to consider the power of language, the importance of understanding different perspectives, and the potential for humanity to evolve beyond our current limitations.
So it seems like science fiction, whether it's presenting a dystopian warning or a hopeful vision of the future, it has this unique ability to make us think critically about the world we're creating.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes it such a, compelling and enduring genre.
Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about a genre that's often associated with humor and social commentary. Satire. How can satire be used to convey important messages without sacrificing entertainment value?
Well, satire has this amazing ability to hold up a mirror to society, to expose hypocrisy, and to make us laugh at the absurdity of it all. It's a way to address serious issues without being overly preachy or, didactic.
A classic example of this is the film Dr. Strangelove. It's a black comedy that takes aim at Cold War paranoia and the threat of nuclear annihilation. It's a film that manages to be both hilarious and terrifying at the same time.
Dr. Strangelove, that's a brilliant example of how satire can be used to address sensitive and even taboo subjects. The film's dark humor and absurd characters serve to highlight the absurdity of the situation, making us laugh at the very things that should frighten us the most.
It's like laughing in the face of danger.
Yeah.
Using humor as a coping mechanism and as a way to point out the absurdity of it all.
Exactly. And by laughing at these things, by recognizing their absurdity, we're also kind of taking away some of their power. Satire can be a powerful tool for social commentary and change because it allows us to confront uncomfortable truths without feeling overwhelmed or defeated.
But satire can be a tricky tightrope to walk, right? There's always the risk of being too heavy-handed or of offending people.
Absolutely. Satire requires a delicate touch. It's about finding that sweet spot between humor and insight, between making people laugh and making them think. When it's done well, it can be incredibly effective, but when it misses the mark, it can be disastrous.
A more recent example of satire that sparked some controversy is the film The Interview. Its premise, a fictional assassination attempt on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, was seen by some as being in poor taste and unnecessarily provocative.
Yeah. The Interview, it's a good example of how satire can backfire, particularly when it comes to these sensitive geopolitical issues. The film's humor was seen by some as being insensitive and offensive, and its release was met with cyber attacks and threats, ultimately leading to a very limited theatrical distribution.
It's a reminder that satire is a powerful tool, but it's important to wield it responsibly and to be mindful of the potential consequences.
Exactly. Humor can be a great way to break down barriers and to address difficult topics, but it's crucial to do so with sensitivity and respect.
So we've seen how satire can be both a brilliant tool for social commentary and a potential minefield. It's a genre that requires a deft hand and a keen awareness of the audience and the context.
Absolutely. Satire, when done well, can make us laugh, make us think, and even inspire change. But it's a genre that should be approached with caution and care.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive. We've explored animation, classic literature, science fiction, satire. We've even touched on some examples where the show don't tell approach might have fallen short. What other insights can you share as we wrap up this section?
Well, I think what's become clear is that storytelling is a powerful tool. for conveying big ideas. But it's not always about being, explicit or preachy. Sometimes the most effective messages are the ones that are woven subtly into the fabric of the story, allowing the viewer or reader to discover them for themselves.
It's about trusting the audience to connect the dots, to make their own interpretations, and to arrive at their own conclusions.
Exactly. And when a story achieves that, when it invites the audience to become active participants in the meaning-making process, it can have a profound and lasting impact.
We'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive, where we'll continue to explore the fascinating ways in which media sneaks in big ideas. See you then. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into how media, sneaks in big ideas.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the subtle environmental messages in Red Dead Redemption 2 to the thought-provoking questions about AI raised in films like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, and we've seen how stories can make us feel so deeply, think critically, and even challenge our own beliefs without ever explicitly telling us what to think.
It's been a fascinating journey through the world of storytelling, and I hope our listeners are starting to see just how pervasive and powerful these subtle messages can be.
I think one thing that's become really clear to me is that stories can be so much more than just entertainment. They can be vehicles for exploring complex ideas, for challenging social norms, and even for prompting personal growth.
Absolutely. Stories have this incredible ability to connect with us on an emotional level, to tap into our empathy and to make us see the world through different eyes.
Yeah. And when we're emotionally invested in a story, when we care about the characters and their journeys, we're more receptive to the messages it's conveying, even if those messages are subtle or implied.
It's like a Trojan horse for ideas.
Yeah.
The entertainment value, it gets us in the door, and then the subtle messages, they sneak in and start to work their magic.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways that you'd like our listeners to remember?
I think the most important takeaway is that we should be more aware of the messages we're consuming. Not all stories are created equal, and some are more subtle and sophisticated in their approach than others.
So it's about being mindful of the stories we choose to let into our lives.
Yeah.
Recognizing that they can shape our thoughts, beliefs, and even our actions.
Exactly. And it's not about being cynical or distrustful of all media. It's about, being more discerning, more critical, more conscious of the ways in which stories can influence us.
So the next time you watch a movie, play a game, or read a book, just take a moment to step back and ask yourself, what is this story trying to tell me? What are its underlying themes? And how does it connect to my own life and experiences?
By engaging with stories on a deeper level, by paying attention to the subtle cues and the unspoken messages, we can enrich our understanding of the world around us and of ourselves.
Right. It's about becoming more active and engaged participants in the storytelling process, rather than just passive consumers of entertainment.
Exactly. And when we approach stories with this kind of awareness, we can unlock a whole new level of meaning and enjoyment.
It's like we're turning on a new set of receptors.
Yeah.
Allowing ourselves to perceive these nuances and the complexities that we might have missed before.
And that, I think, is the beauty of storytelling. It has this incredible potential to open our minds, to expand our horizons, and to make us more thoughtful and compassionate human beings.
Yeah. Well said. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive, into how media sneaks in big ideas. We've explored such a wide range of examples, from video games and movies to books and animation. And we've seen how stories can make us think, feel, and even change the way we see the world.
It has been a fascinating exploration, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed it, as much as we have.
I do too, and I really encourage everyone to keep exploring the world of stories, to keep questioning, and to keep those, critical thinking skills sharp.
And remember, the most powerful stories, they often whisper their messages. They don't shout them. So listen closely, pay attention to the details, and let the stories you encounter, let them guide you on your own journey of discovery and growth.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exploration, of the fascinating world of ideas and how they shape our lives.
Until then, happy reading, watching, and playing.